ESPN Senior NFL Insider KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. KC, a good Friday to you. It is the final real football Friday of the year.
Kicking off a ballroom blitz. I like that. That's a nice sound.
How about that, right? Kicking off a Friday show with a little ballroom blitz. I thought, we would spice it up a little bit before the championship round. And, one thing here is we got the NFC game first. We'll dive into that one. These two teams scored 80 points the last time, only to be upstaged by the two teams that are playing after them today. So I'll ask you, which game are you more intrigued by? Which team will be the more entertaining game? Rams, Saints, Chiefs, Patriots?
I have to say Chiefs-Patriots just because Rams-Saints, honestly, whoever wins that matchup is a new representative from the NFC, so it's kind of new and exciting. With the AFC, it's more intriguing because I think in general, outside of people who are Patriots fans, people who are watching the AFC are going to be rooting big time for the Chiefs because everybody's kind of tired of the Patriots. And I think that matchup also has – so it's going to draw more interest from that perspective. But I think if you look at the matchups, too, and how that game should play out or could play out, I think that there are a lot more interesting options there than the Saints-Rams. I think the Saints-Rams is going to be a slugfest. I think the Chiefs-Patriots could go either way.
All right, let's start with the Saints and Rams as those two teams will play first on Sunday in the NFC Championship game. We saw Philly, slow down the Saints. What would the Rams take from that game, if anything?
The interesting thing they would take away from that game, and this is going to be one of the things that we're looking for all through the matchup, is the Eagles did not blitz. They only blitzed on 3 plays the entire game. And a blitz in our terminology with ESPN stats information is if you're sending 5 or more rushers. So only sending 5 or more on 3 plays. Odd thing is that Drew Brees in the last quarter of the season, he ranked 29th in yards per dropback when he faced a blitz. Part of that may be that the Saints were doing a lot of running, and when they do pass, they were having maybe sort of short passes, side adjustments, things of that nature. But still, 29th is really low. So I'm going to be curious to see if the Rams, who generally haven't been blitzing very much, they're only blitzing about 23% of the time right now. It's one of the like a bottom third of the league. They're not a big blitzing team. Be curious to see if they do that, or if they do like the Eagles did and said, we're going to sit back, play shell coverages. We're not going to send blitzes. We're just going to make sure we stay tight in coverage because we don't think you've got the players to beat us. They may take that route, and I think either could work.
Drew Brees versus the blitz. As you just kind of chronicled, it seemed that he was better when pressured against Philadelphia. Even though they didn't pressure him a whole heck of a lot, he seems that that's what he wants to see. It's like some of us, like me, I'm a procrastinator. I need the pressure.
Yeah, that could be. Also, I think that in plays when he's getting pressure, though, they were getting pressure, but if you give him enough time, he's going to be able to beat any type of secondary. And again, we chronicled it after that game that he threw a ton of passes to Michael Thomas, and I think it was just a matter of whatever they were doing with Thomas on a particular play. It was if they're running combinations with him, then when the pressure comes, he's just going to look for Thomas and say, fine, I'm going to wait till your particular route combination opens. Or if he's running man coverage, then he just waits for him to beat his guy. And I think that's part of the reason that he could afford to be patient, though, too, is that he knew the Eagles, given the state of their secondary, his receiver is going to get open. May not be the case versus the Rams. Peters is capable of playing a lot better than he's played this year, and Talib can be a shutdown cornerback. So if those guys play to their talent level, I think they're going to have a lot tougher matchup cornerback-wise than they did last week.
Yeah, Drew Brees versus the blitz last 4 weeks of the regular season. As you mentioned, 29th in yards per drop back when facing the blitz. And how does the Rams defense, because Donald, very good up the middle, but they don't have those outside edge guys.
They don't have the outside edge guys, and I think that they like to think that their front four is going to get pressure. It's funny when you look at Wade Phillips' history, though. He's always wanted to get pressure, and when I say that, every coach wants to get defensive pressure, but Phillips has been the sort of guy who, in the past, he's been, all right, we'll rush 3. Do we get pressure? No. Okay, we're rushing 4. Do we get pressure? No. Okay, he's going to keep upping it up. We'll rush 5. Do we get pressure? No, let's rush 6. In the past, he's been, we will get pressure no matter what. It's our number one goal on defense, and if we've got to send 8 people, we're going to do it because we have to get pressure. Now he trusts his front four to do that, but when I see that number of Brees ranking 29th in yards per dropback over the last quarter of the season, it makes me think that Phillips may get back to saying, look, we'd like to play shell coverages. The receivers aren't that good. We match up pretty well against them, but, man, we've got to get some pressure. So I wouldn't be surprised if instead of blitzing 23% of the time, the Rams are maybe blitzing more like 30-35% of the time if the situations call for it.
The Saints, on defense, when we turn it around to them, how do they approach Goff here? Are they blitzing him? Do they want to pressure him? Should they avoid the blitz on Sunday? What are you looking at with the Saints defense?
You would think that they would want to blitz because Goff in the last quarter of the season, he did struggle against the blitz. But the Cowboys, when they blitzed him last week, he threw for 9.8 yards per attempt, almost 10 yards per attempt when the Cowboys were blitzing. That Cowboys secondary is a really strong secondary. It's every bit as good as what the Saints are. So I would think that the Saints would say, it's funny. I think that they're probably going to look at last week because I think that I remember reading reports that they might have had a hint of what the Cowboys were going to do offense or defensively. I think the Rams did. So it may be that they may chalk that up to, hey, those are specific circumstances that don't relate to us. We're going to go ahead and blitz. But having said that, if I'm them, I really probably want to sit back in a lot of shell coverages too, because remember what the Eagles did against Goff, and they said, look, we're not going to blitz. We're going to sit back in coverages, and he didn't get very much done. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Saints do that and say, if you can beat us, we'll blitz, but otherwise we're going to stay back here.
Goff, I don't know how you feel about him, but if they're putting the game in his hands, I'll tell you right off the bat, I think the Saints win this game going away, and part of the reason is because I think they're going to make Goff try to beat him.
I think that they're going to make Goff try and beat him too, and I think that they want to do things where Goff is. It's funny that he's got McVay talking in his ear until the 15-second mark. It's almost like McVay is quarterback in the team. So I bet the Saints are going to, and teams always try and do this, but the Saints are pretty adept at this, and they've got a lot of talent in their defense. So I can imagine that they're probably going to give him one look up to the 15-second mark and then say, fine, we're going to change things up. The thing the Rams are going to want to do, though, is get that two-headed running game going. And if they can do that against the Saints defense that has an injury on their defensive line, they're a little thin up there now. If they can get that two-headed running game going, that's going to make the Saints play a different type of defense. I'll be curious to see how much the Rams will, if the Saints say we're going to let you throw, how much they do that, because the Rams still want to be a C.J. Anderson and Todd Gurley team.
Offensive line's always an issue. I mean, I think it's one of the things that the casual fan doesn't take into account, especially at a game of this level. I thought last week, when you look at the Eagles against the Saints, I thought the Saints' offensive line did a pretty good job later on in that game, especially, that long drive. Now, Fletcher Cox ended up getting hurt here, but in the offensive line category, who gets the check mark there?
That's a tough call because the Rams offensive line has been good this year, but at times it has not been as good as it has in past years. And the Saints, though, the funny thing is the Rams have been better at pass blocking and not quite as good at run blocking at points this year. And it's kind of been the flip for the Saints, where the Saints have been better at pass blocking and not as good at run blocking. So, but if I had to give one edge to the team, I'd probably give it to the Saints just because they've shown more consistency than the Rams have. And I think that they've shown that they can do equally well. Although last week, if I'm looking at last week alone, the Rams allowed a pass pressure rate of only 14.3%, one of the lowest totals this season against a pretty good Cowboys defense. So I'd still probably give the Saints an edge, but they're two great offensive lines. But I think that these teams are both going to try and run the ball a lot, and if they do, it's going to be a slugfest game rather than a shootout game.
What do they do with Michael Thomas? He killed the Eagles last week, by the way.
He did, and if I'm them, I send Talib and double him on every play because – see, you cannot let him get on Peters. If he gets on Peters, it's a long day for the Rams because Peters is just he's talented, but he takes too many chances and he frankly takes plays off, and you can't let that happen. So I think they need to say we're going to send Talib with him all over the field. Doesn't matter where he goes. We're going to double him. We're going to bracket him. Whatever it takes, we make sure that he has a lot of coverage options working against him. And then you just got to hope that somebody can stay up with Ginn, because if you can stay up with Ginn and you could stay up with Smith on deep passes, because that's really the only thing they do well, and you could slow down Thomas overall, you've almost crippled the passing game at that point.
C.J. Anderson was a big part of last week's game. How does the Rams running game factor in this week? Eagles couldn't run the ball a lick last week. I don't know how much they tried it, but that was the difference in the Rams win, right?
It was the Rams, and the thing is that the Rams, they'd love to be a power running team, and they were doing a lot of passing earlier this year, but that's what they want to do. And I think part of the reason that they didn't do that is because they had when you've got just one running back, it can be you can't give Gurley the ball 30 times every game. You not want to get him up to 500 carries, 500 touches. It's just not going to work. So I think the Rams, though, this week, because Rankins is out because he tore his Achilles, that's going to weaken the Saints' defensive front, because the Saints' defensive wall has been really good against the run. If you look at the good blocking rate allowed rates this year, almost every game they're below league average. Sometimes they're under the 40% mark. Sometimes they're pushing below the 30% mark. That's really good. But I think the Rams are going to test them and say, Rankin's out. Let's see if you're as good as you used to be.
We've talked about Saints' offensive line and the offensive lines. What's the matchup with Donald? How do they handle him?
That's tough. I still think that with Donald, you just expect that he's going to make certain types of plays, but I would like to run trap plays against him. I would like to do straight double-team blocks on him where I've got two guys going straight at him. Don't worry about combination blocking. Get to the linebacker level. Drive him off the ball. Take him out of the play. If the linebacker goes up against Anderson, fine. If it goes against Anderson and Gurley, fine. Let the linebacker get to Anderson and Gurley. Let them do it play 1, play 2, play 3. By play 10 or 15, that linebacker's wore down and he's going to miss a step. But if you don't take Donald out of every play, he will disrupt your rushing game in the backfield, and then you've got Goff trying to win that game.
All right, when push comes to shove in this one, give us something in this game that stands out as to why one team will be better than the other.
I think that the Saints, I like the Saints by a small margin because their run defense has been so good. The Rams' run defense has been up and down this year. And again, it's a worry that Rankins is out. He's a big part of the run defense. I still think they're going to be, basing the game what I've seen this year, their run defense will play better than the Rams' run defense will. And both teams want to run the ball. And if I got one run defense playing slightly better than the other, and mind you, the Saints this year have not just been slightly better than the Rams, they've been much better, both on an overall basis and on a consistency basis. So if that holds up, then that gives the Saints a huge edge. And then, as you mentioned, then you've got Goff trying to win the game, and I don't like Goff trying to win the game. So given that's a factor that leans heavily in the Saints' favor, or at least leans in the Saints' favor, I'm picking the Saints.
All right, Saints win in the NFC, according to ESPN.com senior NFL insider KC Joyner here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Let's go to the other game. AFC style. 8 straight in this game for New England. This is only the second time ever the Chiefs have been in this game. They have not had great history. Why could this Chiefs team be different from all the others?
I think part of it is this matchup is more favorable in a way that people don't think that it's favorable. I mentioned that good blocking rate metric. Good blocking rate on defense, the league average is 45%. So if you're allowing 45% good blocking rate for the other team, that's middle of the road. You get in an individual game, you'd like to be at 40%. That's a good number. To get below that, you get into 35 or something, you're doing really well. Anything lower than that, you're doing excellent. If you go up to 50%, you've had a bad day. You go up to 60%, you've had a horrible day. In 7 of their last 12 games, the Patriots were allowing 69% or higher good blocking rate on defense. Their run defense has been just atrocious. It's been, and not just 1 or 2 games, but just like I said, very frequently. Even the games when they're not allowing 69% or higher, they're still allowing most of the time 50% or higher. So this has been a terrible run defense, and I think the Chiefs are going to say, fine, we're not going to have Mahomes try and win this thing. We're not going to try and beat your pass defense. We're not going to try and go up against Belichick coverages. We're going to run against you guys and see if you can stop it, because really overall you haven't been able to do this, and I think that's a big edge for Kansas City.
What about Mahomes? Obviously he's a big role here, but so are you suggesting that maybe they should lessen his plate on Sunday?
You're talking about a guy in his first year as a starter. Mahomes is great in 100 ways, and he's going to be a superstar for years to come. But this reminds me of back to, I'm really going to date myself here, but back to in 1983, Dan Marino comes in the league, and he takes over as a starter for the Dolphins, and he has this fantastic 3 quarters of a season. He's easily one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league in his rookie season. Then he goes up against Seattle in the playoffs, and Seattle sits back and plays coverages that he hasn't seen all year long. They do a lot of things to mix him up, and Marino has one of his worst games, and Miami loses the divisional playoff game at home because they did things that he wasn't expecting. I have a feeling that if you've got Mahomes going up against the Belichick defense, and Mahomes' first year as a starter, Mahomes making a lot of these, oh, look, he didn't look when he made that pass, oh, back across the field, late and across the middle of the field, you're not supposed to do that, but he completed it. You don't think Bill Belichick is going to set all kinds of traps and say, fine, we think you're going to take some of those plays and make some of those mistake-prone plays, and we're going to make you pay for them. I think that he will set coverage traps up, which is another reason that Kansas City, they don't need Mahomes throwing that ball 30 times, because I think if he throws the ball 30 times or more, they lose.
Eric Berry's back in this game. We talked about this earlier in the 4 o'clock hour. Is his appearance in this game a win or lose situation? Like, he plays, I think they can win. He doesn't. I think, is he that important?
He is if he plays to his talent level, if he plays to the level that he's capable of playing. I'm not saying he isn't capable, but he is coming out. He was injured and he came back and he was out again. So if he's up to his talent level, he is definitely a difference maker in that now you can get up there and you get him into you get him in the box and let him play up there to stop the run, and he can stop Sony Michel and he can keep that running game from having those explosive plays, because that's part of what the Chiefs have. The Chiefs' run defense they're not nearly as bad as the Patriots have been in some games, but they've had games where they've not played particularly well, and their good blocking yards per attempt, how productive the other team is when you give them quality run blocking, has been too high. They're like the Eagles, they'll win their share of point of attack blocks, but then when you get good block and they're going to break off a big gainer, they need to be able to hold that in check. Barry could help them do that. I think he would be a bigger plus for them in stopping the run than they would stop the pass.
The one thing with the Patriots, let me ask you this question. Typically, they've been in this game 8 times, and there's a lot of times we say they're not the more talented team. Which team is more talented?
Hands down the Chiefs. Hands down the Chiefs are more talented because their backfield is every bit as good or better. The receiving core is much more impactful because you've got Kelsey's much better than Gronk this year. You've got Hill can tear the top off the defense in a way that the Patriots don't have a guy who can do that. You've got Watkins who can do the same thing when he's healthy, and he looks to be healthy now. They've got playmakers on defense. Jones, their defensive tackle, had a sack in 8 straight games at one point. I know my fantasy team, my IDP fantasy team, was very happy with what he was doing. You've got a lot of impactful players in defense in a way that you look at the Patriots, and they're a well-coached team, and they play very well in a lot of ways, but they don't have the kind of impact tear the top off the defense type of playmakers on offense or on defense, I don't think, as the Chiefs do. So I like the Chiefs from a talent perspective.
All right. How about Brady? Let's talk about him a little bit and how good he's been. I saw that video. I was getting my hair cut last night over at one of these places that has the television on, and I'm sitting there as a lady's cutting my hair, and I'm watching who the Patriots play last week. Man, I'm blanking out. Who the Patriots? Chargers. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's one of the Charger, defenders, and he's saying, "Man, it's unbelievable how fast he gets the ball out of his hands." Like he was amazed at how fast. Like still at 41. So how important in this game this week is an advantage of Brady?
It's Joey Bosa who was saying that, and then again, a guy of his caliber too, the potential. One of the best defensive players in the league, being able to say that was incredible. But he was right. He was getting there, and Brady gets the ball so quickly. The thing about Brady is he knows what he wants to do in the short passing game, because a lot of times the Patriots are using combinations, and it's a high-low combination or an inside-out combination, and there'll be short passes either way, the low pass and the high-low combination, or one of the inside-outs will be a short pass. He's so good at doing that and knows what he needs to do. And so many quarterbacks, if they see a high-low combination, they go, I want to go to the deeper pass. I want to look at that first. And they're going to look at that, and if they think it might be there, they're going to go ahead and go there. Like Ben Roethlisberger, he wants to throw vertical. He doesn't want to throw short passes. Brady will sit there, and he will take the dink and dunk throw. He doesn't mind doing that. Funny thing is, last week when he did go vertical, he averaged he had one of his best games because he had 16.3 yards on vertical attempts last week. So he'll take those vertical passes. If you start to come up and try and stop them, then he'll beat you deep. But he's perfectly happy with saying, I'll throw the dink and dunk passes and only give you 1.5 seconds to get to me.
James White, 15 catches. Is he even in the game plan this week?
It's amazing. He probably is. But if I'm them, I want Michelle doing some power running. I don't necessarily want to go with White. White again, they're a situational team, so it depends on what you're going to do in defense. When they saw that big nickel come out for the Chargers, and they saw all those defensive backs, they say, okay, we're going to do different things to get people open and things. So I think they'll like their matchup of White versus the linebackers to try to get him open on passes. But I still think the Patriots are going to try and do a lot of power running in this game because they've been doing a lot of creative things with their offensive line, a lot of creative blocking sets and such. Dante Scarnecchia is easily the best offensive line coach in the league, so they'll do a lot of creative things up there. But if I'm the Chiefs, I'm probably okay with that because the Chiefs should want this to be a lower-scoring game.
Gronk, what's his role?
I think they'll use him a lot as a blocker, and I don't think they may try and get him a vertical pass or something to make sure that the Chiefs think of him going deep, but he hasn't been the same player this year. And again, he's talking about, or at least reportedly talking about, thinking of retirement. What's that old saying? If a player's thinking about retire, they're probably already retired. Not saying he's not going to try, but because he is a hardworking guy and he did work hard last week. But if he's thinking he might be running out of gas, he might be, or he might not be the same impact player. So you got to game plan for him. But if I'm thinking of who's going to tear the top off vertically in this game for the Patriots, he's not the guy I'm thinking of.
So no receivers. Who's the weapon? Who's the guy?
Who's the guy? Well, first off, I'm thinking who I have to stop from a talent perspective. I'm thinking Hogan first. I'm thinking Edelman. I got to stop first, but he's not really a vertical receiver. You can play call him open as a vertical receiver. He's not just going to beat you from that perspective. But if I'm the Chiefs, if I'm thinking who do I have to stop from a personnel perspective, I don't want to put in man coverage and go over the top. I think Hogan, because Hogan has shown in the past he's had some really good vertical and stretch vertical numbers in the past. He can take that role, so that's one thing I worry about. But my big thing for the Chiefs is making sure that if I'm them, I want to stay very, very, very disciplined in coverage. Make him go 12 or 13 plays dumping. Make him take those dink and dunk throws and hope you can force a fumble and go up there and make good tackles, because if you let Brady throw the vertical passes like he did last week, this game's over.
Shootout. Who's that favor?
It's amazing. You would think coming into this game that the Chiefs, who have scored over 500 points this year, you would think they'd have the advantage. But I did a study for ESPN a few years ago, looked at all the offenses that scored 500 or more points and said, how do you do in shootout games? Shootout games are when each team scores 24 or more points. So you would think those teams would do very well, but they won just over 60% of their games. And if you took a couple of the teams that were outliers out of that process, it was like 53% of the games of what the top offenses of all time, how they favored in shootouts. So basically 50-50 proposition. This year, the Chiefs, scoring over 500 points, they're 8-0 in non-shootout games and 5-4 in shootout games. So they fall into that category of 50% shootout games. The Patriots, though, they're 7-5 if they get into a non-shootout game, but you put them into a shootout game, both teams scoring 24 more points, they're 5-0. They want the game to be high scoring. The Chiefs should not want this game to be high scoring. Keep it low scoring. Try and win this thing, 21-17, something of that nature. That's how they should want to win it, because they get into a shootout game, the Patriots are the team going to win that game.
Should be fun, and we have it all for you right here on 97.3 ESPN. It all goes down this Sunday. The coverage begins at 2. KC Joyner on Monday. Actually, Monday. I'm not sure what's going on Monday yet. We're all kind of up in the air. We'll figure out what's happening Monday. But we'll be breaking down all the games, the NFL, and we'll be talking some draft coming up in just about 10 minutes from now. But KC, enjoy the games on Sunday.
Appreciate it, man.